Today we'll expose the habits developers just can't quit and why these trends are ruining the magic of gaming. From recycled mechanics to predatory monetization, we'll dive into what's broken and what we can do to fix it. And by the end you'll know exactly what's ruining gaming and how we can demand better as players. You know what really makes me mad? Live service games that promise the world and then deliver a grindy, unfinished mess. We all know Anthem, for example, a game that was hyped as the second coming of Iron Man meets Destiny. A shiny, hollow shell where the only thing more repetitive than the gameplay was the disappointment. I personally don't like live service games, but I understand why for some players it sounds cool. Essentially, a game that keeps evolving, constantly delivering new content and giving players a reason to stick around. But in practice, too many of these games end up being glorified chores, with more fetch quests than actual missions. So instead of the live service trend, how about we go back to the basics? Give us a game that feels whole, like you actually cared about. No half measures and no promises you can't keep. Just one incredible experience we'll rave about for years. I mean, do I really have to talk about this? The thing that turns a $70 game into a $700 experience if you're not careful. It's like, oh, you paid full price for the game. That's adorable. Now here's a battle pass, some gacha mechanics and a $20 skin for your character. Because honestly, who doesn't want to pay real money to make their virtual warrior look like a banana? Games like Diablo Immortal have turned this into an art form. And by art form, I mean a scam with pretty graphics. This game had the audacity to take the phrase pay to win and crank it up to 11. If you want to max out a character, just fork enough cash over to buy a small car and you're good. Listen up developers, we don't mind paying for good content, we just don't want to feel like we're getting hustled. Respect our time, respect our wallets, and maybe don't lock the coolest stuff behind a paywall that costs more than my rent. Vote with your wallet, support games that treat you like a valued player, not a walking ATM. Because if I see one more $10 emote, I might actually crash out. Okay, we can all agree that not every game needs to be an open world, right? It's like every developer sat down in a meeting and said, you know what this cooking sim really needs? A sprawling 50 square mile open world map with collectibles. Look at Forspoken. On paper it sounded amazing. Magical parkour, a vast fantasy open world, and a story that promises to be epic. But in practice it's a massive map filled with nothing. Just endless fetch quests, empty landscapes and a checklist of activities that make doing my taxes feel fun by comparison. Don't get me wrong, the problem isn't the concept of open worlds, it's the execution. Too many games treat it like a mandatory feature, cramming in vast, lifeless maps that feel more like a chore than an adventure. Look, if I wanted to spend hours running across a barren wasteland with no meaningful interactions, I'd go outside without my phone. Breath of the Wild is a game that shows how it's done. It's not just big for the sake of being big. Every hill, cave and ruin feels like it has a story to tell. It's a world you want to explore, not just a check-off list of objectives. So instead of measuring open world success by the number of square miles, how about focusing on quality over quantity? Give us worlds that feel handcrafted, not mass-produced. So to all developers, it's not about how big your map is, it's about how you use it. And players, let's stop giving a free pass to every game with a giant map and nothing to do. Demand better, because we deserve it. Know what feels like déjà vu? Copy-paste sequels. You fire up a brand new installment of your favorite franchise and in 5 minutes in, you're like, wait a second, I've played this one before. Call of Duty, I'm looking at you. Year after year, you slap a fresh coat of paint on the same mechanics and call it a day. And FIFA is literally the same game but with shinier grass. It's like paying $70 for a yearly patch and a roster update. I get why they do this. Sequels play it safe, why mess up a formula that just prints money? But there's a fine line between giving fans what they love and straight up laziness. At some point, it stops being a sequel and starts feeling like a DLC pack someone forgot to label. God of War Ragnarok was a sequel, but it didn't just rest on the laurels of the 2018 masterpiece. It expanded the story, deepened the combat and gave us more emotional gut punches than we were prepared for. Sure, it felt familiar, but in a way that builds on the original, not just copied it. So why can't every sequel aim for this level of innovation? Here's the deal, if you're making a sequel, give us a reason to care. Evolve the gameplay, take risks and wild thought, maybe don't just copy the UI and slap a 2024 on it. Let's talk about one of the most frustrating trends in gaming, the early access excuse. Or worse, the full price but actually unfinished release. You know the drill, you pay $60, boot up the game and it's all crashes, bugs and invisible NPCs. Congratulations, you just bought a beta test. Do you remember the hype for Cyberpunk 2077? It was supposed to be the next big thing, but what we got was an open world game where cars would spontaneously combust and characters could phase through walls. I know, game development is hard, deadlines are brutal and delays aren't fun for anyone. But you know what's less fun? Paying full price for a game that feels like it's held together with duct tape and sheer hope. The thing is, if your game isn't ready, just don't launch it. Seriously. I promise we'll survive a few extra months without it. Gamers will wait for something great, but we won't forgive being sold a broken mess. Because a delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game? That disaster lives on in gaming infamy. Polish your game, take your time and give us something worth playing. Because if I see one more T-posing character ruin my immersion, I might actually lose it. So here we are. After all the rants about unnecessary live services, cash grab microtransactions, liveless open worlds, copy-paste sequels and broken launches, one thing's clear. We as gamers deserve better. Gaming is supposed to be about creativity, immersion and fun. Not corporate checklists and soulless monetization schemes. We've seen what happens when studios prioritize profits over passion. I guess the last thing I would advocate for is vote with your wallets. Support developers who take risks, who push boundaries and who treat their players with the respect they deserve. So if a game launches unfinished or riddled with predatory monetization, don't let them get away with it. Call it out. Demand better. So let's raise the bar next year. Let's demand creativity, fairness and quality from the games we play. And together, let's make sure this industry moves forward. Not just in graphics or scope, but in heart and soul. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if I forgot something. And as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, donate, masturbate.